may feel tired right now. Not the kind of tiredness that comes from movement, not the kind that a good night of sleep usually fixes. This tiredness feels different. Your body might be still. Your eyes might feel heavy. Yet something inside you refuses to fully let go. It's confusing when this happens, because on the surface, nothing seems wrong. You didn't push your body too hard. You didn't exhaust yourself physically. And yet, the moment you slow down, you feel drained. This kind of fatigue doesn't announce itself loudly. It builds quietly. It doesn't come from what you did. It comes from what you carried. All day long, your mind stayed engaged. Not always intensely, not always consciously. You adjusted to situations. You held back reactions. You processed information without stopping. Each small moment took a little space, a little attention, a little energy. None of it felt heavy while it was happening. It rarely does. The mind is good at keeping things moving during the day. It knows how to postpone rest. But postponing does not mean releasing. At night, when the body finally slows down, the mind doesn't automatically follow. It notices what it's been holding. That's when the tiredness becomes clear. You may lie down expecting relief, only to realize that rest doesn't arrive. Not because you aren't tired enough, but because your mind is still full. Mental fatigue is different from physical fatigue. Physical fatigue asks for sleep. Mental fatigue asks for space. And when it doesn't get that space, it keeps the system awake. You might notice that even simple thoughts feel heavier now. Things that normally wouldn't matter feel harder to carry. The mind resists effort, yet it won't stop moving. This creates a strange tension, a tiredness that doesn't resolve itself, a restlessness that doesn't feel active. It's not anxiety. It's not stress in the usual sense. It's overload. The mind has reached its limit without having a clear place to unload. During the day, there is always something to respond to, something that keeps the attention directed outward. At night, that direction disappears, so the mind turns inward, and when it does, it brings everything with it. Unfinished conversations, emotions that didn't have room to be felt, small pressures that were ignored because they seemed manageable. Individually, none of these things were overwhelming. Together, they become weight. You might feel this as a pressure behind the eyes, or as a heaviness in the chest, or simply as a sense that you're done without knowing why. This is not weakness. It's not a lack of discipline. It's what happens when the mind has been active for too long without relief. Most people misunderstand this state. They think they need more sleep, or more distraction, or more control. But control is effort, and effort is exactly what's missing right now. Mental fatigue doesn't respond to force. Trying to push through it only adds more weight. Tonight is not about recovering energy. It's about reducing what you're carrying. You don't need to think your way out of this feeling. You don't need to analyze it. Analysis keeps the mind working. What helps now is allowing the load to soften on its own. You don't have to decide what to let go of. You don't have to sort through your thoughts. Just notice that you don't need to hold everything at once. The mind doesn't rest when it is still responsible for the day. It rests when responsibility is paused. Nothing needs to be resolved tonight. Whatever feels unfinished will still be there tomorrow, and it will be easier to face then. Not because it changed, but because you will have rested. Right now, you are allowed to pause. Not because everything is complete, but because carrying it further serves no purpose. The tiredness you feel is not asking for answers. It's asking for relief. And relief begins when you stop demanding clarity. You don't need to feel better right now. You don't need to feel rested. Even allowing a small release is enough for this moment. The mind knows how to unload when it is no longer pushed. You don't need to help it. Just staying here, without pressure, without expectation, is already doing more than you think. Let the tiredness exist without trying to fix it. It doesn't need to be explained. This kind of fatigue is not something to overcome tonight. It's something to soften around. And that softness is where rest begins. Stay here quietly. Nothing else is required. As you stay with this feeling a little longer, you may begin to notice something beneath the tiredness. A quiet pressure. Not sharp, not dramatic, just constant. It's the feeling of having carried yourself all day, of having stayed functional, attentive, composed, even when it wasn't easy. Most of the time, this pressure goes unnoticed. It hides behind routine, behind responsibilities. But at night, when there is no role to play, it becomes visible. You might sense it as an inner tightness, a feeling that you've been on for too long. Not in a way you can easily explain, just a sense of having held something together. This kind of pressure doesn't come from one big event. It comes from many small ones. Moments where you adjusted instead of reacting. Moments where you stayed silent instead of speaking. Moments where you kept going even though you were already tired. None of these moments felt important on their own, but together they create weight. The mind is good at carrying things quietly. It does this automatically. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't check how much space is left. It just keeps holding. During the day, this holding feels normal, necessary. At night, it feels heavy. You may notice that even rest feels effortful, that lying still doesn't immediately bring ease. That's because the body has stopped, but the pressure hasn't been released yet. This pressure is not asking to be solved. It's asking to be acknowledged. Acknowledgement doesn't mean revisiting everything. It doesn't mean replaying the day. It simply means recognizing that something has been held for a long time. Most people try to ignore this feeling. They distract themselves. They scroll. They wait for sleep to take over. But sleep doesn't come easily when the mind still feels responsible. Responsible for remembering, for planning, for staying ready. The mind doesn't rest while it believes it still needs to manage things. Tonight, nothing needs to be managed. There is no decision waiting to be made, no situation that requires your attention. The pressure you feel does not need action. It needs permission to loosen. You don't have to consciously release it. That would be effort again. Just stop reinforcing it. Stop checking if you're okay. Stop asking why you feel this way. Stop trying to understand the pressure. Understanding keeps it active. Relief begins when you stop engaging. You might notice that the pressure shifts when you don't fight it. It doesn't disappear all at once. It softens. It spreads out. Instead of feeling concentrated, it becomes less defined. This is the beginning of release. Not dramatic, not noticeable at first, just quieter. You may also notice thoughts trying to attach themselves to this feeling. The mind looks for reasons. It asks, is this about today? Is this about something I forgot? Is something wrong? These questions don't need answers tonight. They are habits, not signals. The mind is used to explaining discomfort, but explanation is not required here. Discomfort can exist without meaning something. You don't need to justify the tiredness you feel. It doesn't have to make sense. Mental fatigue is not logical. It's cumulative. It comes from time spent attentive, from energy spent adapting. And that energy deserves rest without explanation. You might feel moments where your attention drifts slightly, where you stop thinking clearly for a few seconds. This is not something to correct. This is the system beginning to slow down. You don't need to stay sharp. You don't need to stay aware. Awareness can soften without disappearing. If you feel the urge to check in with yourself, to see how tired you are or how calm you are becoming, let that urge pass. Checking is effort. Effort keeps the mind engaged. Right now, nothing is being measured. There is no progress to track. The night is not a task. It's a pause. You've already done enough today. Enough reacting. Enough adjusting. Enough holding. This moment doesn't ask for strength. It allows weakness without consequence. You don't have to stay composed here. You don't have to maintain anything. If the pressure returns briefly, it doesn't mean you're going backward. It means the mind is testing whether it still needs to hold on. You don't need to answer that test. Just remain where you are. Not pushing, not pulling, just staying. The pressure will loosen when it realizes nothing is required. You may notice your breathing changing slightly. Not deeper by intention, just slower. The body responds when the mind stops interfering. You don't need to guide this. Let the body do what it knows. If thoughts appear again, let them remain incomplete. They don't need to be finished. Completion belongs to action. This moment is not for action. You are allowed to be unfinished tonight. Nothing is lost by resting. Nothing important disappears. The pressure you've been carrying doesn't need to be held through the night. You can let it rest here, just for now. Stay quietly, nothing else is required. As you remain here a little longer, something subtle begins to change. The tiredness is still present, but it no longer feels as dense. Not lighter exactly, just less tight. This is often the moment where the mind stops insisting. It's no longer trying to push forward, no longer demanding clarity. Instead, it begins to loosen its grip. You might notice that the fatigue feels different now, less like something you're carrying and more like something that is settling. This shift is quiet. Many people miss it because they're waiting for relief to feel dramatic. But mental relief rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, when resistance fades. You may notice that you're no longer thinking about how tired you are. The tiredness is still there, but it no longer dominates attention. This is important. When fatigue stops being the center of focus, it stops growing. The mind amplifies what it watches closely. When attention softens, so does the intensity of the feeling. You don't need to make this happen. It's already happening because you stopped pushing. You might feel moments of stillness appearing on their own. Small pauses where nothing in particular is happening. No strong thought, no emotional pull, just space. For some people, this space feels unfamiliar. The mind asks, should something be happening right now? Am I supposed to feel different? These questions are habits. They don't need answers. Nothing is missing. This space is not emptiness in a negative sense. It's the absence of demand. During the day, your inner world is constantly demanded of. Attention is required. Reactions are expected. At night, those demands fall away. So the mind doesn't know what to do at first. Eventually, it realizes it doesn't have to do anything. That realization is rest. You might notice your thoughts becoming less complete. Ideas start and then quietly dissolve. Sentences form halfway and then fade. This is not confusion. It's the mind stepping out of effort. You don't need to finish thoughts right now. Completion belongs to daytime activity. Night allows incompleteness without consequence. You may feel your awareness becoming wider, less focused on one point, more spread out. This is not distraction, it's recovery. A mind that has been overloaded needs room to expand again. This expansion happens naturally when pressure is removed. You don't need to guide it, just let it unfold. If a thought returns briefly, it will feel different than before. Less convincing, less urgent. It doesn't pull you in the same way. That's because urgency has lost its fuel. Urgency comes from resistance. Without resistance, it cannot sustain itself. You may notice that you're no longer waiting for sleep. Earlier, there may have been a subtle impatience, a sense of, I need to fall asleep. That need is a form of effort. And now, it begins to fade. Sleep does not respond to demand. It responds to release. You don't have to arrive at sleep. You don't have to cross into it. Sleep happens when the system is no longer being directed. Right now, direction is unnecessary. There is nowhere you need to go. You might feel the body responding more clearly now. A heaviness that is not uncomfortable. A sense of being supported. The surface beneath you feels more present. You don't need to adjust your position. The body will move if it needs to. You don't need to help it. If you notice a moment where attention drifts away from the words entirely, that's fine. The words don't require focus anymore. They can stay in the background, like a steady sound that no longer needs to be listened to. You are not missing anything. Nothing important is being said now. The presence is enough. If you return briefly to the sound of the voice, that's fine too. There is no correct pattern. The mind is no longer being trained. It's being allowed to stop performing, allowed to stop managing. The fatigue that once felt heavy is now simply a sign that the system is slowing down, not failing, not shutting down, recovering. You don't need to label this feeling. Labels pull the mind back into effort. Just let the experience remain undefined. Undefined is restful. Defined requires work. You've already done enough work today. There is no advantage in staying alert. Alertness belongs to survival. This moment is safe. You don't need to stay ready. If awareness softens further, let it. If thoughts dissolve mid-appearance, let them. Nothing needs to be held. Nothing needs to be carried forward. The night is doing its work without your involvement. You can rest inside that. Just remain here quietly. Not watching, not waiting, just allowing. As this settling continues, the fatigue begins to change its texture. It no longer feels heavy. It no longer presses. It becomes neutral, not pleasant, not unpleasant, just present, without demand. This neutrality is often misunderstood. Many people think rest should feel good, comforting, clearly soothing. But deep rest often feels simple, undramatic. It doesn't announce itself with relief. It arrives quietly, when the mind stops searching for something else. You may notice that the urge to understand what's happening has faded. Earlier, the mind wanted to explain the tiredness, to name it, to fix it. Now, that impulse is weaker, not because you forced it away, but because it no longer serves a purpose. The mind stops asking questions when it realizes no answers are required. You might notice moments where you're no longer thinking about tomorrow, no planning, no mental rehearsal. If a thought about the future appears, it feels distant. It doesn't pull you forward. That forward pull was effort, and effort is slowly leaving the system. The mind is no longer leaning into the next moment. It's staying where it is. This staying does not require attention. It happens naturally when urgency dissolves. You may notice that time feels less defined now. Minutes blur together. There is less awareness of how long you've been here. This is not something to correct. It's a sign that the mind has stopped tracking. Tracking belongs to productivity. Night has no use for it. The body continues to respond in subtle ways. Breathing becomes less noticeable, not slower by intention, just less monitored. Muscles release tension that you didn't know they were holding, not all at once, in small, quiet adjustments. You don't need to notice these changes. The body does not require observation to relax. It requires absence of interference. If you feel a brief impulse to check in again, to ask if you're resting enough, or if the tiredness is changing, let that impulse pass. Checking pulls the mind back into effort. There is nothing to measure here. The night is not a process to manage. It's an environment to enter. You've already entered it. The fatigue that once felt overwhelming is now simply a background condition, like darkness in a room. It doesn't need attention. It doesn't need explanation. It's just there. And because it's no longer being resisted, it no longer feels threatening. You may notice longer spaces where no thought forms at all. Not blankness in a sharp sense, more like openness. These spaces don't require filling. Filling them would be habit, not need. The mind fills space when it believes something is missing. When nothing is missing, space can remain empty. Empty does not mean lacking. It means unburdened. You don't need to hold on to awareness now. Awareness can soften without disappearing. You don't need to stay alert to keep yourself safe. Nothing in this moment requires vigilance. The day is over. Whatever challenges exist are not present here. They are not in this room. They are not in this moment. You don't need to prepare for them. Preparation requires energy. Energy returns after rest. Let the sequence be what it is. Rest now, clarity later. The mind does not need reminders of this. It already knows. You may feel that sense of neutrality deepening. Less emotion, less commentary. Just a steady, quiet state. This is not numbness. It's rest without stimulation. The nervous system responds when stimulation drops. You don't need to help this response. It's automatic. If thoughts appear again, they are softer, less structured. They don't connect to each other. They don't build momentum. You don't need to notice this. Just let it continue. The sound of the voice doesn't need to remain clear. It can fade slightly. It can move into the background. Nothing important depends on it now. The presence remains even if attention drifts. You don't need to stay with the words. You don't need to stay present. Presence has already done its work. Now it can rest too. If awareness dims further, that's natural. If it brightens briefly, that's natural too. There is no right direction. The system is no longer being guided. It's being allowed to slow down without supervision. The fatigue you felt earlier has served its purpose. It signaled that something needed to stop. And now, stopping is happening. Quietly, gently. You don't need to mark the moment. Just let the night continue. Nothing else is required. As this quiet neutrality settles in, something else begins to appear. Not a thought, not an emotion, a sense of safety. Not the kind that comes from certainty or from knowing what will happen next. A softer kind. The kind that comes when nothing is being demanded of you. Earlier, the mind was tired because it was full. Then it became tired because it was holding. Now, it no longer feels responsible. And when responsibility fades, the system relaxes. You may notice that you're no longer scanning your inner state, no longer checking if something is wrong. That checking was subtle, almost automatic. It came from the need to stay ready. Now, readiness has no role. There is nothing approaching, nothing to prepare for. The night is not asking questions. You might notice that the idea of tomorrow feels distant, not threatening, not urgent, just later. The mind no longer feels pulled toward it. That pull was tension, and without it, the present moment feels more stable. Stability does not feel exciting. It feels ordinary, and ordinary is safe. During the day, your nervous system stays alert. It watches. It anticipates. At night, that vigilance can finally loosen. You don't need to tell it to relax. It relaxes when it realizes there is nothing to protect against. You may notice that even the idea of rest is no longer something you're aiming for. Earlier, rest felt like a goal. Now, it feels like a background condition, something that is already happening. You don't need to achieve it. You don't need to deepen it. Just being here is enough. You might notice the body feeling heavier, not uncomfortable, supported. The surface beneath you feels more reliable. You don't need to adjust your position. The body settles when it senses safety. You may feel moments where awareness fades slightly, then returns. This is not something to control. It's a natural oscillation. The system moves between presence and softness. Both are allowed. There is no need to hold on to either. If thoughts appear now, they feel distant. Not because you pushed them away, but because they are no longer relevant. The mind does not engage with content when it doesn't feel required. Engagement is effort. Effort has been set down. You may notice that emotional tones have flattened, not numb, just quiet. Nothing stands out. Nothing pulls. This absence of pull is deeply calming to the nervous system. The system rests when nothing is asking it to move. You don't need to name this state. Naming brings the mind back into activity. Let it remain undefined. Undefined states are restful. Defined states require maintenance. You don't need maintenance now. You may notice that even the sound of the voice feels less like something you're listening to and more like something that is simply present. That's okay. The voice does not need attention. It's only here to accompany, not to lead. If attention drifts away entirely for a moment, that's fine. Nothing is lost. Nothing important depends on staying aware. You may feel the edges of awareness soften further, as if the boundary between thinking and not thinking is less clear. This is not confusion. It's the mind stepping out of effort. The mind does not need to be sharp here. Sharpness belongs to problem solving. This moment contains no problems. You may feel a gentle sense of letting go, not of something specific, just letting go in general, as if the grip you didn't know you were holding has loosened. This is not something you need to encourage. It happens naturally when pressure disappears. If there is still a small part of the mind that wants to stay alert, that wants to keep watch, it doesn't need to be pushed away. It can rest too. Alertness does not need to turn off completely for rest to deepen. It only needs to stop working. You don't need to stay aware to keep yourself safe. Safety is already present. You might notice that your breathing feels less noticeable now. Not slower by effort, just less monitored. Monitoring was work. Work has ended. The body continues to regulate itself. You don't need to help it. If awareness dims further, that's natural. If it returns briefly, that's natural too. There is no right level. The system is no longer being adjusted. It's being allowed to settle at its own pace. The tiredness that once felt uncomfortable has transformed into stillness. Not a heavy stillness, a gentle one. A stillness that doesn't ask for attention. You don't need to stay with this feeling. You don't need to protect it. It's stable on its own. You can let it carry you. The night continues without your involvement, and you are safe to move with it. Just remain here. Nothing else is required. As this sense of safety settles more deeply, something else begins to happen on its own. The need to stay present starts to fade. Not suddenly, not completely, just enough. You may notice that you are no longer holding your attention in place. It drifts without effort. It returns without urgency. This movement does not need correction. Earlier, attention was something you managed, something you directed. Now, it moves freely. This freedom is not chaos, it's trust. Trust that nothing requires supervision. The system no longer believes it needs to stay alert in order to protect you. And when that belief loosens, rest deepens naturally. You may notice that the boundary between thinking and resting feels thinner now. Thoughts appear less often, and when they do, they feel distant. They don't connect to each other. They don't form stories. They arise, and then dissolve without asking anything from you. This is not something to observe closely. Observation would bring effort back. Just let it happen without comment. The mind is not being emptied. It is being left alone. Left alone long enough to return to a quieter rhythm. You might feel moments where awareness softens significantly, where the sense of listening becomes faint. That's okay. You don't need to stay with the words. The words have already done what they needed to do. Now they can fade. The presence remains even when the sound loses clarity. If there is a brief moment where you feel almost asleep, and then awareness returns slightly, that's natural. The system moves gently between rest and awareness before letting go completely. You don't need to guide this process. Guidance is no longer necessary. There is no step to complete, no state to reach. Sleep is not a destination, it's a release, and release cannot be forced. You may notice that the sense of time has almost disappeared now. Minutes no longer feel distinct. There is no sense of how long you've been here. Time tracking has stopped. This is another sign that the mind is no longer managing experience. Management belongs to effort. Effort has ended. You don't need to remember anything from this moment. Memory is not required. Nothing important depends on recall. The body continues to settle. Small adjustments happen without instruction. Muscles soften. Breathing regulates itself. You don't need to notice these changes. The body does not need observation to rest. It needs absence of demand. If there is still a faint thought somewhere, a distant idea, a fragment of concern, it doesn't matter. It no longer has strength. It passes through without pulling attention. This is not something you need to notice. Just let it pass. The mind has learned that it does not need to carry everything into the night. That learning happens quietly, without words, without effort. You may feel a sense of drifting now, not falling, not floating, just drifting. There is no edge to reach, no final moment to cross. If awareness fades completely, that's fine. If it lingers softly, that's fine too. Nothing is being measured. Nothing is being evaluated. You don't need to stay awake for this. You don't need to stay aware. Awareness has already done enough. Now it can soften. The night does not require participation. It continues whether you watch it or not. You are safe to let go of attention entirely. Safe to stop listening. Safe to stop following. Nothing will be lost. Nothing will be missed. The system knows what to do next without guidance. You don't need to stay here. You don't need to stay anywhere. Just let the softness continue in whatever way it chooses. At this stage, attention no longer needs to stay in place. It loosens on its own. You may notice that you're no longer following the words in a linear way. Some phrases arrive, others pass unnoticed. This is not distraction, it's release. Earlier, attention had a role. It needed to stay alert, to listen, to hold. Now, it doesn't. Nothing here requires focus. The mind is no longer gathering information. It's no longer forming meaning. Meaning belongs to effort. Effort has already been set down. You may notice that thoughts appear less frequently now. And when they do, they feel thin, like fragments without structure. They don't develop. They don't connect. They dissolve before becoming anything. This is not something to observe carefully. Observation would bring effort back. Just let the experience remain undefined. Undefined states do not require maintenance. You might feel the sense of being here soften, not disappear, just become less clear. The boundaries that usually separate attention from rest are no longer distinct. There is no need to keep them intact. Nothing depends on clarity now. Clarity belongs to daytime awareness. Night allows blurring. You may notice moments where you are not sure if you are listening or drifting. That uncertainty is not a problem. It's a sign that attention is no longer anchored. Anchoring was effort, and effort has no place here. You don't need to stay awake. You don't need to stay present. Presence has already done its work. Now it can dissolve. If awareness fades and then returns briefly, that's natural. The system often moves gently between rest and awareness before letting go completely. You don't need to guide this movement. Guidance implies control. Control is no longer required. You may feel a sense of distance from your thoughts now. Not separation, just space. As if the thoughts are happening somewhere nearby, but not involving you. This space is not something you created. It appears when engagement stops. You don't need to hold on to it. Holding would reintroduce effort. Let it be as it is. You may also notice that the sense of time has almost vanished. There is no longer a sense of before or after. Just this moment. And even this moment does not need attention. The body continues to respond without instruction. Breathing happens on its own. Muscles release without direction. You don't need to notice these changes. The body does not require awareness to rest. It requires absence of demand. If there is still a faint alertness somewhere, a part of you that wants to stay just slightly awake, it does not need to be removed. It can soften too. Alertness does not need to shut down completely for rest to deepen. It only needs to stop working. You don't need to monitor anything. Monitoring belongs to responsibility. Responsibility has already been set aside. Nothing in this moment depends on you. The night is not asking questions. The system is no longer being evaluated. There is no right level of rest to reach. There is no target state. The mind is simply unwinding in its own way. If attention disappears entirely for a while, that's fine. If it lingers faintly, that's fine too. Nothing is being lost. Nothing is being interrupted. You don't need to remember anything from here. Memory is not required. The night does not ask for recall. It asks for letting go without effort. And effort has already ended. You may feel that sense of drifting deepen. Not falling, not moving, just drifting. There is no edge to reach, no final thought to complete. Completion belongs to activity. This moment is not active, it is permissive. You are safe to stop engaging completely, safe to stop listening, safe to stop holding attention in place. Nothing important will be missed. The system knows how to move forward without guidance. You don't need to stay here. You don't need to stay anywhere. Just let the night continue in whatever way it chooses. There is nothing left to do now. Nothing left to listen for. Nothing left to understand. If the words are still reaching you, they don't need to be followed. They can stay in the background, like a distant sound that no longer asks for attention. You don't need to remain present. Presence has already done its work. The mind no longer needs direction. It no longer needs permission. It has already softened. Thoughts may still appear, but they are faint now, incomplete, unfinished. They don't form sentences. They don't carry weight. They pass through without asking anything of you. You don't need to notice when this happens. Noticing would bring effort back, and effort is no longer needed. The tiredness that brought you here has changed. It is no longer a problem to solve. It is no longer something to manage. It has become a signal that the system is letting go. You don't need to respond to it. You don't need to interpret it. It can simply exist until it fades on its own. The body understands this moment without thought. Breathing continues without awareness. The rise and fall of the chest no longer needs to be followed. You don't need to stay connected to the body. Connection happens automatically when nothing interferes. If attention drifts away completely, that's fine. If it returns briefly, that's fine too. Nothing important depends on awareness now. The night does not require witnesses. There is no moment you need to catch, no transition you need to feel. Sleep does not announce itself. It arrives quietly when the system no longer feels observed. You don't need to wait for it. Waiting is effort. Effort has already been set down. If there is still a faint sense of alertness somewhere, a small part of the mind staying awake, it doesn't matter. That part will soften too when it realizes nothing is required. You don't need to push it away. Pushing would bring effort back. Just let it be. The night continues whether you follow it or not. Time no longer needs to be tracked. Minutes no longer matter. There is no before to return to and no after to reach. Only this easing. The mind no longer feels responsible for carrying the day forward. Whatever was unfinished has already been set down, not solved, not resolved, simply released from responsibility. It will return later with more energy available, but not now. Now is not for understanding. Now is not for improvement. Now is not for change. Now is for absence of demand. You are not required to be calm. You are not required to be relaxed. Those ideas imply effort. All that's needed is the absence of resistance. Resistance has already softened. The system knows what to do next without guidance. You don't need to help it. You don't need to stay here. The words can fade completely now. They don't need to continue. Nothing important is being said. Nothing needs to be remembered. The presence remains even when attention disappears. You are safe to let go entirely. Safe to stop listening. Safe to stop following. There is no abrupt ending to reach. No final thought. Just a gentle continuation into rest. The night holds what you no longer need to carry. You don't have to.